got a small computer, like a new Mac Mini, one of those mini PCs, it's powerful, it's compact, and it's perfect for music production. But when it comes to streaming, lessons, or content creation, there's two things missing from every small PC: a webcam and a microphone. That's right, that headphone slot at the front is not a microphone slot. That's where the OBSBOT Tiny 2 comes to save the day. So this is the Tiny 2. This is what you're seeing and hearing, the microphones from the Tiny 2 as well. This is a 4K image, and the great thing about this is it actually doesn't need a lot of light, and we'll get into that in a second. First of all, you have AI auto-tracking for a hands-free performance. No more awkwardly staying in one spot. The Tiny 2 can track you and can even track different parts of you. What I mean is your hands, so if you're looking to train someone on the chords that you're doing, it can track your hands, track your face, while keeping your hands free. Plus, you don't need a second person in the room to do it. The Tiny 2 can do this for you. Like every OBSBOT, I can put my hand up and then it'll start tracking me. There we go. And then I can start moving around. Now, I've done loads of videos about this, about trying to fool it to track it, and long story cut short, I can't. You just put your hand up again, it stops tracking, and there you go, simple as that. But we can take it one stage further. In fact, we can take it 2 stages further, because with the OBSBOT Tiny 2, it can do certain things, including tracking certain areas like a whiteboard or a group, or for people who actually do things like lessons, it can track your hands. So I'm going to put this in hand mode, and right now it's actually going to start looking at my hand and as I move around, and this is obviously a bit bizarre, but if you're playing guitar, for example, or you want to actually show the chords of where you are, you want to track a certain hand, you could say which hand to track. Right now it's tracking my right hand, so I'm going to deliberately tell it to track my left hand. So as I'm playing away, if I move up and down a fretboard, for example, an imaginary fretboard, or if I'm playing piano, it's gonna follow that hand depending on what I'm doing. The OBSBOT Tiny 2 is 4K. Using a crisp 4K image, even if you're streaming at 720p or 1080p, means that your audience sees every detail. Your facial expressions, the fingers on the fretboard, even your gear setup without either a grainy, washed out look, or even worse, pixelated. The other part of this is you have 3 presets, so you can manually move the gimbal and save that position. The second part of this is I can control it through my voice. So if I'm all the way over there performing, I can say position 1. There we go. And that's one that I've pre-saved. I've saved it to look at a different angle. So position 2. There we go. As I say the 3 positions, there's 1, 2, and 3. It moves across. Position 1. You have to be quite articulate to say it, and you have to say it slowly, but it does work. And the great thing is you could tell it to move to a different position, and therefore it's looking at a different thing. With OBSBOT's gesture controls, you can raise your hand and it can auto track you without clicking on any buttons whatsoever. You have zoom just by doing an L shape, and you have dynamic zoom by doing L shape on both. So in between songs, you could change the zoom point. So I can use my hand like an L, and it zooms in, hi. I can also tell it to zoom out just by doing the same thing, and it'll zoom back out again. Now audio-wise, you're listening to the microphone and it's got auto gain on it, so if I moved all the way over there, it would change the gain, but there's no noise reduction. However, you can add noise reduction on. So that's noise reduction with weak, then you can go right up to noise reduction with strong. So if you've got noise outside of the room you can't control, you can turn noise reduction on. This would be great for speaking if you're doing lessons, but musicians would actually put in their own audio interface for the guitar. So I'm going to turn noise reduction off, and you can even change the distance. So you may or may not be able to hear that there's some drilling going on next door, but if I actually turn the noise reduction onto weak, you might not be able to hear that. I don't know, we'll find out when I edit this. If you've got no fancy lighting, then no problem. The Tiny 2 can adjust the exposure automatically and actually needs very little light to get a decent image. Now the auto exposure system built into Tiny 2 can either look globally in the area or dedicated to a face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my studio lights off. So I've got a big light here, I've got another light just here, I'm just going to turn that off. And this is on automatic, so as I turn these off, you've got the lights going around the outside. I'm even going to turn off my little LED lights and things like that. So the only light now is coming from about that much gap from a blind and the light coming from the monitor of my computer. And yet you can still see me, it's in glorious 4K. it's looking fine. Now, if you do have studio lights, or if you've got lights that are flashing, for example, you can see how quickly it adjusts the lighting automatically. So turn normal lights back on, you can see how quickly it kind of adjusts. And if you've got things like stage lighting that's like moving lights, then this is going to work really well. This is a webcam, and this is working incredibly well. So if you're doing things like a late night jam session, or you're in a dimly lit studio, the Tiny 2 has got you covered. Tiny 2 is magnetic. It comes with this little adapter, so it literally sits on there like that. And you can pull this through, so you can put this on the back of your monitor and still keep it flat and stable if you want to. If you don't want to use magnets, then it actually has a thread at the bottom as well. So if you've got things like a tripod, or if you want to use this as a B camera somewhere else, you can do that pretty easily. With it being USB-C, you just need a USB-C cable to go in, and it automatically recognizes it and sorts it out. The OBSBOT Center software is really easy to understand. As well as the hand gestures, you can actually tell it to track in certain modes. You've got normal tracking, upper body, lower body, headless, so you could concentrate on showing the guitar. That's great when you're live streaming and he's gone to sleep. It's great when you're live streaming, and it means that you know it's going to point in the right direction. If you don't want to put your hand up or gestures, you can control it with your voice. You can put it on auto sleep, so it will sleep within 2 minutes of not being used. It can even have a sleep background, so as you put it to sleep, it displays a background to saying, "We'll be right back," or you can put your own one in. Sleep, Tiny. Hi, Tiny. Nice and simple. You can control it really easily. You can say things like zoom in closer, zoom out further. And those 3 presets that I said you could put with keystrokes, you can say position 1, position 2, or position 3, and it recognizes it and moves to the certain places. So for example, I've got this at a random position right now. So I can say position 1, position 2, position 3. Without touching it, it will move to the place that you want it to. And it means it keeps you hands-free. You don't even have to touch the keyboard while you're live streaming. So there's a link in the description box if you want to go and pick up a Tiny 2. And the camera you're looking at right now is OBSBOT's flagship, which is called the Tail Air. I've got a video about using 3 of these as your pro setup for your live stream. That's the video that's just come up on screen. And at the other end of the spectrum, the Tiny 2 has a little brother called the Tiny SE. The Tiny SE is HD, so it's 1080, but it's under $100. Go and check it out, because that's the other video.